Moniz with Faith Surf School Hawaii in front of the Outrigger Waikiki Beach Resort. This is Surfers in Residence, where I get the honor and privilege to interview intimately the best surfers in all the world. So today I have a special guest, and his name is Shane Dorian, a very admired person in our life, in our family's life, and we're so happy that he's here. Thanks for coming, Shane.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
Yeah, so welcome to Waikiki and Oahu, and today is a special day because you will be inducted.
Not indicted. I don't want to be indicted.
Inducted into the Hawaii Hall of Fame. Right? Waterman Hall of Fame. And we are and that is a special award given, and you can't just get that for, one thing. It really is a lifestyle, a whole life of, accomplishments. Well, Shane, you have a lifetime of surfing, and you were also in a very important part of our surf culture, as things changed and like you guys put some force into it. I think 11 years in competitive surfing. Yeah. And I think that one thing that I feel that when I talk to other people or myself watching your whole career, there's one thing that stands out the most, and it's more than your surfing, but it's just who you are as a man, your loyalty and your commitment, and your love for the sport, but that you brought it to another level, being the person that you are. You've come through time with that, and that's a really beautiful thing for me to see in your life and to watch you grow with your family and your son. So, yeah, but why don't you kind of share where it started and what's.
Well, to go all the way back, I was born and raised in Kona on the Big Island. My parents both lived in Hawaii. My dad moved to Hawaii he started coming to Hawaii before statehood, and then soon after Hawaii became a state, he moved to Hawaii full time.
Wow.
Lived here in Honolulu. In fact, worked on the beach here and I was a bartender here for years. Surfed and did the whole Waikiki thing, and then my mom and dad met on Maui and then moved to Kona and had me and my sister Paige. And yeah, I grew up in Hawaii, and just an amazing place to be born and raised. And my parents had a little restaurant in Kona on the beach. So that's where I learned to swim. That's where I just spent basically all my time in the water, fishing, diving, spearfishing, surfing, bodyboarding. And so it was just I was a typical Hawaii kid that had a lot of access to the ocean, so I was super lucky.
Wow. And that's where you learned to surf, in Kona?
That's where I learned to surf in Kona, yeah. So I learned to body surf and bodyboard because my parents' restaurant was right on a beach called Magic Sands. And that's kind of like a shore break, like a beach break, and it's good for body surfing and bodyboarding. And soon after, my dad had for my 5th birthday, I think, my dad had one of his old surfboards from California cut in half and reshaped. And then he gave it to me for my 5th birthday.
Wow.
And so I started surfing. I fell in love with surfing, stand-up surfing. And that's what I would do every day, every chance I got. So.
Wow. From 5.
From 5.
And probably unattended too, right? If they're working busy.
My parents were super busy with the restaurant. So if I wasn't body surfing and bodyboarding right outside the restaurant, it was like, imagine here's the restaurant. I was literally body surfing, bodyboarding right there all day long, fishing, diving with my friends. And then when I was starving, I would come in and eat all the food in the restaurant and go back out.
Wow.
I had a really amazing childhood, and it just incredible memories. And then soon after that, when I started stand-up surfing, my mom would drop me off at Banyans, which is about a mile down the beach. And that was my local surf spot forever. That's where I grew up surfing. And she would just drop me off with $2 for the whole day. There was a little store across the street, and I would just surf as much as I could and be a surf rat. And surfing was amazing for me. I was really lucky to surfing for me was super important in a lot of different aspects of my life. At the start, it was for fun, right? That's what I did for fun. And then, like a lot of kids, growing up, my parents went through a really rocky time, got divorced, and there was a lot of kind of crazy stuff happening in my family. And So at that point, surfing went from like just fun to like a safe space to like something that was, it sort of saved me from, it was always there for me in a way that I felt like was super healthy. It was like it was like something that kept me sane, kept me happy. And so when I was stressed out or when I was sad or whether I was mad, surfing was always there for me. And so it was really cool because it was something I felt like head over heels in love with at a really young age.
Do you feel like you're pretty good at that young age, or was it something you grew with,
I wasn't like hyper focused on like stand-up surfing. I was like really spending a lot of time from like the age of like literally 3 until I was like maybe 8, like sort of fishing and diving and surfing and body surfing and bodyboarding all the time, but just spending tons of time in the ocean. Then probably about the age of 9 or 10, I started getting really, really focused into surfing. I started surfing in a couple little competitions, started shortboarding, like, had like a, high performance shortboard at the time. I got my first sponsor, which was a surf shop in Kona called Pacific Vibrations.
Oh, yeah.
The Big Michael family, they took me in and sponsored me and helped me get surfboards and really like kind of like nurtured me in my surfing. And so I ended up having a great like network of friends and peers and uncles and mentors that were all from the surfing world that kind of like shaped who I became.
Wow, that's beautiful. It's so important, and in a lot of ways you have become that for your community and the people around you. But I asked Seth, my son Seth, and he is now surfing the championship tour. But before he did, he was asked by one of the magazines who was his favorite surfer, and he had said you. And I said, hey Seth, why did you choose Shane? And he said because he competed at that level of surfing with so much respect. Then he did his own thing and he started to do the big wave thing, but it was like he did it his own way. And so it's kind of like you revamped your life, right? Because that wasn't really a super thing back then, right? I mean, you had your big wave surfers like the Eddie, right? Or maybe even the Mavericks. Did they have the Mavericks back then? But that was it, right? It was like you just jumped and did this whole new big wave thing. Remember that?
I mean, I always like, surfing is incredibly challenging, especially at Pipeline, And so like where I was born and raised, my local spot and basically the whole island, the big island, a big swell is like, 8 foot on the face, 6 foot on the face, 8 foot on the face. That's like the waves are big where I live. So I, grew up being like a kind of a high performance, smaller wave type of kid. And so when I was 15, I moved to Oahu. So I shipped my car over. I had this crappy little Rabbit and lived on my friend's floor. And, my best friend Jason, and I became really good friends with Ross Williams and Maddie Liu and had this great network of friends that were all that same age. And then, I just grew up in high school over here. And then that was like for me, a huge challenge to try and immerse myself in bigger waves and the power of the North Shore. And that was terrifying to me. And my peers at the time were already charging huge waves, like Ross and Jason Magallanes. They were already surfing Waimea when they were like 13 years old. And so, Pipeline and the North Shore in general was a huge challenge for me. And then, like you said, I competed on the world tour for 11 years. And I always loved surfing big waves, to be honest. So I competed for 11 years straight on the world tour, essentially trying to win a world title. And for like the last 3 or 4 years, I was pretty burnt out on surf competition. And I really never felt at that point that I was like hitting my true potential. And that was sort of the deciding factor for me. I wanted to feel like I was doing my best surfing. And I had such a strong love for big waves. And so that's what I really wanted to focus on when I left the tour. And that was part of the reason I left, was because I felt like that was the arena that I could shine the best and surf my absolute best and like meet my true potential in surfing. Because it really is, if you're in sports or if you are an athlete, to feel like you're not meeting 100% of your potential is I just feel like that, it's pretty obvious that, fast forward 10 years, you're going to look back and be like, what was I doing,
Was there, back then, though, was there anything to jump on? There wasn't like a big wave tour, was there?
There was nothing.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was really no precedent. I remember having multiple conversations with my sponsors at the time who only knew me as really a competitive surfer and, I was competing and then maybe making a lot of surf content for surf videos and stuff. But when I went to them and had these meetings where I was like, hey, here's what I really want to do. And I went in there with like a full treatment with like all these like paragraphs and like bullet points of what I wanted to do. Here's my plan. Here's my 3 to 5 year plan. And I didn't have a single name on there to be like, hey, I want to do what this guy's doing.
Right.
There was no pathway. There hasn't been a person that had gone in a direction that I really wanted to emulate or kind of go in that direction. So at the time, what I wanted to do was really unprecedented. And so I was really stoked that my sponsors kind of like, it was a bit of a leap of faith on their part to sort of believe in my vision and what I really wanted to do, and that I wasn't going to just retire from the tour and become chilled out and lazy and just kind of not want to travel and do nothing. I really wanted to get more motivated and produce much more and on a bigger level and just shine for myself and what I wanted to achieve,
How old were you when that happened?
I think I stopped competing around 34. Stopped competing full time on the tour.
Oh. What did your wife think about that?
My wife, Lisa, was, she's a big part of most of my really important decisions. She had always known that I loved surfing big waves, for sure. I'd always loved it since I was like 16, 17 years old. But she didn't know to the level that I loved it until I stopped. And then I became hyper-focused on the mental training and the physical training. I was training like an animal. I wanted to get like in crazy physical condition and mental condition to do my absolute best surfing and have no excuse whatsoever, and put myself in the safest position I could as well to be really hyper physically fit. She definitely was a bit, I know that it was a hard thing for her because I really was focused on trying to surf the biggest waves in the world at that time. And there was a lot of times, and I always did that by myself, right? I would always pack up my stuff last second. Oh, there's a massive swell in Portugal. There's a massive swell going to Jaws, massive swell going to Mavericks. And, it's always like a really stressful thing if your partner is going to do something that's life-threatening. And as we know, a lot of those days of big waves, sometimes they end in tragedy, unfortunately. And so I think that was pretty heavy for her, for sure. But I think she has a really healthy, kind of mindset about that. With like, I feel like she knows who I really am, and that you kind of have to support your partner in the things that they truly are passionate about. And I'm grateful for that. And luckily for her, now at this age, I'm kind of chilled out on the big waves a little bit, and she doesn't have to stress out so much. But that was my first thing. I remember like, every time I had a really big wave session, the first thing I had to do was like find a phone and call Lisa.
That would be a struggle as a wife, to come that far in you think, okay, yay, party, we're retiring, it's done, right? And you're like, no, we're going to start something that's not even existing in a way, except that it just is your passion, and it's neat to see how from that time to now, how much it evolved into its own tour. And another career almost for people.
The big wave path wasn't so much of a path back then. And it's really neat. There's been a lot more opportunity for the next generation of kind of big wave surfers who feel passionate about it. It's kind of cool that they have something there to pursue that is concrete. Yeah. It's still a struggle though. It's still, I think relatively speaking, I think it has a ways to go. But yeah, it's been incredible. I've had an amazing life of surfing, and I'm super grateful for all the opportunities that surfing has given me, for sure. It's been amazing. Yeah.
What is your most something that you'll take forever as far as traveling the world? What is one really golden thing?
I think the people that I've met along the way are the biggest thing. I mean, that's what I remember. Like if you ask me about Fiji, automatically the Fijians is what I think about. You ask me about Tahiti, I think of the moms and the dads and the uncles and the people that I stayed with in Tahiti and all that. Been to Tahiti probably 30 times. Probably been to Fiji 30 times. Been to Japan probably 25 times. And Brazil, probably almost 30 times. And every time, that's probably the thing I remember the most is the people. And it's amazing now, you know, I have my own kids, and my wife, Lisa, loves to travel as well. And my kids both love to travel. And that's probably I got really burnt out on traveling because that's what I did for a living for so long. And then now I'm kind of seeing it through my kids' eyes and being able to travel with my kids and show them different cultures and meet different people from different places and having, you know, giving them exposure and education that you don't get in a schoolroom. You know, it's awesome.
Do you feel like when my kids started traveling, and surfing all over the world, one of the things that they always come home and would say, "Oh, Dad, I met your friend. Someone came up to the beach and said, gave me their number, and if I needed anything, to give them a call." And it would happen all over the place. How was that? You know, does that have Jackson experienced that?
We're not there yet because he's not traveling alone, right? So much because he's kind of too young, but I definitely am anticipating that happening a lot because the places that he'll end up going, I've most likely been there a few times. It was pretty funny for him though, because he just knows me as Dad, right? I'm like the dad guy who, you know, I'm like the police officer, the warden, who's always yelling at him. That's basically Dad, right? And so we just went to Brazil together for a surf contest, and we went there, and we were like on our way from the airport to like where we're staying at the beach, and we were staying with like local Brazilian family, super, super cool. And I was so excited for him to have this like amazing experience, like this cultural experience to meet local people and see how different people live. And Brazil's, a lot of it is like there's no middle class. It's really radical, you know, there's like really wealthy people and then like really, really, really poor people. And in America, you have a massive middle class, and there's a way to get from like the poor to like being basically super poor to the middle class in America. There really is a way. If you work super hard and you're highly motivated and that's your goal, you can get there. In Brazil, it's really difficult. It's almost impossible.
Wow.
And so a lot of those things I feel like are super important for our kids to see. And anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but it was funny because we're on our way, and the guys we were staying with we're driving, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you've been here before, right, Shane?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been here a long time ago for a contest." And they're like, "Yeah, you won the contest, didn't you?" And I had won the contest there in Florianopolis like however many years ago. And my son Jackson was tripping because in his mind, we were just going to the beach in Brazil. He had never been there before, you know what I mean? And so he all of a sudden saw it like from a different perspective of like, whoa, my dad's been here before. Like, wow, he's a surfer. He did do all this stuff before. I don't think he really thinks of me like that. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah. It's like the same thing with Tony. So he's the beauty is that as he does, surf the world, he's gonna find those pockets and those people that you have touched, and has touched you, and they're gonna be there for him. And it's a very impactful, powerful thing that he'll get to experience, pretty soon.
I feel like it's so cool too, because for your kids that are experiencing that what that means is that like when you and Tony were traveling wherever you went, you weren't just like staying in a hotel and doing your own thing and just here I'm here strictly business, I'm here for this contest, I'm just gonna surf, and then as soon as I leave I'm out of here. If you have that mentality all the time, you don't really experience all the incredible opportunities that you have when you travel. So I mean, that goes to show that Tony had spent a lot of time with the local people in different places, or else you would never have those kind of connections and relationships with people. Yeah. Which I think are the most important thing.
Well, I wanted to read something. I'd called Lindy Irons and I asked her, hey, what would you have to say about Shane? Because I know, you've had a lot of life with them, her and Andy. And she said, Shane is Andy's favorite surfer, and he wanted to ride for Billabong because Shane did. He always had represented Hawaii with so much class, most honest, straight-up guy, incredible moral compass on life, and one of the most respectful surfers in our time. His surfing is timeless and effortless. Shane cares deeply about his wife and kids, and I mean, he's kind of perfect, happy face. I just love him, And, for someone to say that for as long as your career has been in a very challenging career life, it's not just Lindy. I feel like, Bobby Higa, your Virtua co-founder as well, had so much to say about you, and it's and everyone says pretty much the same thing, but it's beautiful how it's more of you as a human being that is what we celebrate. And I feel like me having it here is more like the surfing is secondary to just you as a human being, as a husband, as a father, as a mentor, as a, just a human, So thank you so much for giving the best, of you to offer to the surf community, to our kids. They've had you to look up to and represent Hawaii in such a beautiful way.
Those are huge compliments. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm sure it was like, challenging at certain times, but why do you think that you had, such a strong, presence to have that reputation all these years?
Honestly, don't have a great answer to that. I think a lot of it is I really didn't have a choice. A lot of it was like I had to work crazy hard. Mm-hmm. And a huge part of that is my mom, Susie. Mm-hmm. She was an incredibly she has always been an incredibly hardworking woman. She's the type of person who makes no excuses. She's the type of person who, I could go on about her forever, but she just has a ton of integrity and a lot of self-respect. And I think I learned a lot of who I am today from her, for sure. And then, times were different, right? When I was a kid, like these days, if you're a good surfer, say from like Maui or Kauai or California, whatever, and you fly out to Oahu, a lot of times there's like a team manager picking you up, and then they whisk you away to like a team house and the fridge is full. Yeah. And then you got a quiver of boards and like somebody's over there, oh, you want some wax? Like there was zero of that when I was a kid. I was like sleeping on my friend's floor, saving my own money, working as a busboy. Times were different, right? And whether it's better or worse, I'm really grateful that it was a grind. That's what made me who I am. And then also, like, I had incredible mentors in my life, like some great men in my life that were incredible examples of integrity and just good people, kind of people I wanted to be like when I got older. So,
well, I think that you are, and there's a lot of younger kids, ones that we love together, that are up and coming, and you've been mentoring them for years, and through your contests in Banyans, right? Yeah. Right where you grew up, you're having a keiki contest for years, right? Many years, right?
Yeah, 25 years.
25 years. That's when did you start that? How old were you?
I think I was 22.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Wow, time flies.
Yeah. Yeah, and you've been doing that every year. I mean, every year it's just like you get all the best surfers in the world to come, fly over to Kona, just to sign autographs for a day, and there's just so much joy and happiness. But it just seems like such a good vibe and such a good thing that you've been giving to your community and offering that to them. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's been a crazy, wild ride. We have a Keiki Surf Classic is the name of it, mm-hmm. and it's in Kona at Banyans, which was my home break. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was 22 years old. I was a kid, and my sister Paige, who has been like super supportive my whole life, and mm-hmm. she was like, now that this is when I was like 22 years old. I was 21, and she goes, well, now that you're a pro surfer, I had limited success, but I was starting to get there. You should think about giving back in some way to your community. I'm like, I felt like a kid, like 22, I felt 21, I felt like a kid. And she sort of like, we chatted about it a bit, and we decided that I would start a Keiki Classic, like a kids event. And at the time, honestly, there was no precedent for that either. Mm-hmm. There was no pro surfers who had their own kids event mm-hmm. at all. And so there was no like, I want to do like Taj Burrow's contest, or I want to be like Andy Irons contest, or Kelly Slater's contest. And so we kind of winged it and started. Luckily, I had a really great network of pro surfer friends. And so that was like a big thing for me, because I was like, I really want to have an event that's super special and we wanted to include grades in it, so you sort of had to have a 2.0 grade point average, so it like would inspire the kids to do their schoolwork, to have something to work towards. And then on the day, I would fly in a bunch of my pro surfer buddies to come over and hang out with the kids, talk to them. We would all have like an expression session, just something to kind of differentiate the experience of the day instead of just hardcore surf competition. It was more about like, bring your family down, bring your kids, bring your family, watch your kids surf, and they can meet the pros and watch them surf and get autograph signing, and we feed them and have all kinds of fun things happening around it. So I felt like I was in a unique position, right? It was much, even though it was a lot of work for me personally and my family and friends and volunteers, we were in the best position to be able to do it. And I felt like that was our responsibility since we were in that position. And it was a hit from the start. The kids loved it in the community, the families did as well. And that was the only reason we did it. There was really no reason at all. There was no incentive otherwise. And then so we just started doing it, and it was awesome. And it's been a lot of hard work for a lot of people in our community, but I feel like a lot of kids, it's funny now, we have kids in the event whose parents surfed in our event.
What would you share to another parent that has a child that maybe is not as connected as you are to a sponsor, or Jackson is to his own sponsor, but they see talent, the child really wants it. Like, what would you start off and say to them?
I would say the number one thing is be grateful that your kid fell in love with surfing, because that's like the number one thing. Like, I'm so excited that both my kids love to surf, and that's the number one thing. And I say that's the majority of your focus should be like, this is amazing, my kid loves to surf. Because for me, I mean, surfing has given me so much, right? Like a job and all these crazy opportunities. But over all that, it's just been the most important part of my life as a human being, to have that same thing as when I was a kid and my family was going through struggles. It's been there as like for my own sanity and my own peace of mind, and my own, I feel like it cleanses my soul. And so for me, the next generation, my kids, your kids, other people's kids, most important thing is like surfing like gives you friends, gives you experiences, gives you a reason to travel, work, save your money to go to Australia or Fiji and experience different cultures. As far as like pursuing surfing goes, for kids who may not be as well connected, I would say it's really not a disadvantage at all. I would say it really isn't. I mean, I feel like the playing field's more level now than it ever has been. These days with social media, and especially social media, probably it's like so easy for kids to get inspired, so easy for kids to stay current. Back when I was a kid growing up, maybe once a year at the theater by my house, or in my, there'd be like a surf movie playing. Like 3 months from now, did you hear this movie's gonna come in like January? And then everyone would be there that night, and like that's where you got your like stoke and inspiration from, and that was amazing. But now the kids, like, they can see what their favorite surfers are eating for lunch, how they stretch, where they are right now. I mean, it's amazing. Like, whether you're a kid from Sumbawa in Indonesia, or in France, or Portugal, or Africa, or Hawaii, it's kind of a level playing field. They all have the same tools. A lot of kids have access to decent equipment. I would say work your butt off. And if you love surfing, then act like it. Really work hard to earn your surfing time. Whether that's hard work in school, hard work with your family, get involved and be a great kid, and like earn that surfing time so you can surf as much as you possibly can. Surf more than any other kid that you know if you love surfing. The greatest surfer of all time, Kelly Slater, who's a great friend of both of ours, he probably loves surfing more than I've ever seen any human love surfing.
Wow.
And, he obviously has an incredible, and was born with incredible athletic ability and talent, but he would never be the surfer he is right now unless he had a deep, passionate love for surfing. And that's something you can't give to somebody. That's something they have already. So whether you're from Newport Beach or South Africa, whether you're certain skin tone or certain gender or certain where you live, doesn't matter. If you absolutely are passionate about surfing and you have ability, then you can be the next whoever. And that's super exciting, right? There's no barrier of entry for surfing. Save up a few bucks and get a surfboard, and you have surf trunks. You're good to go. You're on. So, I think that is part of the allure of surfing. I think that's part of the magic of surfing is you can be a little kid from anywhere in the world, and if you have passion for surfing, you can shine and take it to the next level. And we've seen so many examples of that, right?
Yeah, that's great advice. Both to the parent and to the child, right? So as we, just conclude our time together, I'm so happy. There was so many amazing things, we got to hear from you, and a lot of things that I didn't know, which is amazing. What is the next thing for Shane?
The next thing for me is probably more of the same, to be honest. I mean, I'm at a point in my life that I've been working super, super hard to get to. And I'm slowly kind of, the R word is like a weird no word not to talk about, but I've been working super hard to retire for a super long time. And even though it's like, I'm not retired, I'm still doing things technically for a living, but I don't see them as work at all. It's things that I would love to do and would want to do anyway. I love to surf still so much, and surfing's super important in my life. So I would say more traveling with my family, more time with my kids, more time in the water, more time mentoring other kids, which I'm super passionate about and I love to do. And I feel like I have a knack for it. And so, yeah, I mean, just probably more of the same, living a life that is surrounded by a lot of surfing, I'm sure, and spending more time with my family.
But there's something else that you do that's not has anything to do with surfing.
Yeah, I'm an avid bow hunter. Which is like some people out there are like, what? Ew, okay, click, I'm off. But I mean, yeah, it's something I'm super passionate about. I love bow hunting. I love archery. I think it's like part of the little kid in me still. When I was a kid, I used to like, play in the cow pasture and go in the woods and just find things to do. And like, and now it's like, I get to dress up in camouflage and go like in the mountains all day long and not have to talk to anybody. And I love bringing meat home, and I love that my family eats all the venison I bring home, and I care for it myself, and we have incredible meals. That's for sure a huge part of it. Don't get that mistaken, but the fact that I get to go and be in the woods, in nature, by myself and get my head on straight, that is very similar to my love for surfing and why I love to surf. It keeps me sane and gives me peace. And I really do like being alone, not in like a negative way, but I really enjoy it. And so that's just an important part of my life that is definitely not going away.
That's awesome, and I'm glad you have that.
Me too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with me.
Thanks,
and with us, and I'm glad that we get to have this forever, and we'll see you tonight. But thank you for joining us at Surfers in Residence, and we'll say goodbye right here. See ya.